Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage University of Michigan Electric Vehicle Center Director, Alan Taub.
I'm Alan Taub, as said. I'm the director of our Electric Vehicle Center. It's my true pleasure to see this many people coming, but of course our speaker tonight is a real draw. I hope most, if not all of you, got a chance to see our posters. Students, if you didn't make it to the recruiting tables, that probably means you're not actively looking for a job, but I saw a whole bunch of resumes being collected. And the displays we've had, I have noticed over the past 5 years the transition of our student vehicle teams. With one exception, they're all pure electric. And the idea of an electric boat, that it went so fast the students weren't allowed to drive it. So those displays will still be there tomorrow if you didn't get a chance tonight. And I just hope you had a real good time. If you get here early enough in the morning or during the breaks, please make sure you go through the posters. We will have an award of the best posters. And we didn't do this last year, but it's a really interesting idea for the top 3 winners. They get to do a lightning presentation. So entertaining for us, but for our industry members, there's your future employees. I want to just now give a quick look at our agenda, both for tonight and tomorrow, and in particular in the morning. We were going to get a welcome from our College of Engineering Dean's office, but Michael Drake. I can't resist providing the intro of, we spent the whole afternoon with our advisory committee, taking them through some hard questions and challenges. Tomorrow morning, I just get to brag on the accomplishments we've had as an EV center. And then we will hear from Jason Carroll, VP of Manufacturing at Eaton, who I'm told, I did get to preview his slides and I've known Jason forever. We're gonna find out electrification and batteries aren't just for vehicles. And then we're trying breakouts this year. So we'll have 2 different places. Some will stay here, some will go over to the auditorium, where we'll have separate sessions for workforce and for technology. And you can see then the afternoon. During the lunch, we'll do the poster awards. We have Jin Seo coming from Hyundai as one of our keynotes, another set of breakouts, and you can see the rest of the agenda. So it's packed full. Please make sure you get here you can have some little light breakfast in the morning, but we're gonna start right on time. It's my pleasure tonight to introduce John McElroy. I've known John since I joined the automotive industry. In fact, was on what used to be called Autoline Detroit a few times. And he has a way of asking the right questions during an interview. If you've done a session with him, it's not predetermined questions. And he has a way of getting the challenging things out. I think we'll hear some of that tonight. But John is one of the leading voices in the automotive industry. He's not only a journalist, he's a lecturer, a commentator. And if you look at what he's done with Blue Sky, he's an entrepreneur. Right? And a successful businessman. So again, we now have Autoline Daily and Autoline This Week. You'll always hear him on AM 950 where he does the automotive breakouts. And if you are not on the mailing list for Autoline After Hours, you should be. I mean, whether you like to watch the show or read the transcripts, if you want to stay current on what are the real things going on in the automotive industry, that's just a phenomenal way to do it. And so it's my pleasure to have John come join us. I think they probably have some music, so you should walk a little slower than me. and really looking forward to what we have to say tonight, John.
Look at this audience. Good evening, everybody. So I'm going to do something I've never done on a stage before. I'm going to take a selfie with all of you. So everybody wave. I want everyone to be, yeah, there we go. I'm going to put that out. So thank you for that. I got a question. Who's interested in electric cars here? Yeah, I figured. Okay. So let me get to what I want to talk about tonight. And I'm calling it the EV imperative. And I'm not going to talk about climate change and how we need EVs to fight climate change. I'm not going to talk about how, boy, if you get an EV, it's, from a total cost standpoint, it's going to be better than an ICE vehicle, because you already know all that. I'm going to talk about the EV imperative for the automotive industry. And I'm going to make the case here that if you're an automaker who doesn't have a really progressive EV program, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. And I'm talking about that because right now is the most exciting time in the automotive industry. Certainly in my career, and I've been here a long time, this is incredible what the industry is going through. I keep saying that you probably would have to go back to about 1905 to find so much change going on, so much new innovation, so many different things happening with so many different companies. But right now, we've got a situation that the industry's in. And it's very exciting, it's extremely challenging, and there's going to be companies that don't make it through this. I'm going to make the point tonight that the auto industry is no longer growing on a global basis. I'm going to make the point that most legacy automakers stopped growing over a decade ago. We've got too many car companies with too much capacity, too many suppliers, too many models, too much of everything. And it's crippling the profitability of this industry. We've had government policy, especially here in the United States, that bounces from one extreme to the other. And I'm pretty sure we're going to see the pendulum swing back all the way to where it was before. And so we've seen this industry, just in the United States alone, probably burn through $35 to $40 billion. Just take a torch and burn that money up. Tariffs are causing all kinds of chaos in the industry. Supply chains are being rejiggered. Costs are going up because of that. The Chinese are formidable competitors. They are really, really good. And legacy specifications and legacy procedures are holding back product development just at a time when we need to move a whole lot faster. And I'm going to make the point over the next 15 to 20 minutes or so that EVs are the best way out of the morass that this industry is in right now. And I like to say, don't panic, even though everything is really in a turmoil and the industry is booking up all kinds of losses. This is what the auto industry has always done. It runs into problems, not every single year, but certainly every single decade it runs into a major crisis and it works its way through it. And that's what's going to happen again. And there's nothing wrong with this industry that cannot be fixed with great product. But it's got to be great product. It can't be competitive product. It can't be nice product. It has to be great product. And the work that all of you are working on right now can make a decisive change in where this industry is going to go. So let me talk about peak auto. I'm going to make the case here, as I've already said, the auto industry is no longer growing. And this is something I don't hear any CEO of any automaker or supplier talk about, but the industry is not growing. And you don't have to pay attention to the numbers. You just have to pay attention to the blue line there. And you have to look at the left-hand side of that blue line and the right-hand side of that blue line. And what it shows is car sales in the United States from 2014 to 2024. And you'll see it's essentially flatlined. There's a dip when we hit the COVID years. we're climbing back up. But in point of fact, we sold more cars in this country a decade ago than we do today. In fact, we sold more cars in this country in the year 2000 than we do today. And it's not just the United States. Here's Europe, kind of similar line. The sales today in Europe are about the same as they were a decade ago. This is an industry that's not growing. Guess what? Japan is even worse. Japan is selling fewer new cars. I'm talking about their home market right now than they did a decade ago. What's the matter with Japan? I mean, they're not even holding steady. They have one of the fastest aging populations in the world. And in fact, they have population decline. Japan's market is only going to get smaller than it is right now. There is not zero growth in Japan. There is a negative growth in Japan. And guess what? And this is the one that surprises everybody. The Chinese domestic market is not growing. This does not include exports. This does not include commercial vehicles. This is passenger car sales. Chinese car sales are bouncing around 22 million a year. They're not growing. Guess what? China has the same problem that Japan does, an aging population and a shrinking population. This year alone, demographers predict China's going to lose about 3 million people. Now it has 1.3 billion, so it's going to take a while for that to happen, that effect to really take hold. But this is a big surprise to most people. The Chinese market is not growing. And when you look on the world, because there are growing markets in certain places, Africa, parts of Asia, the Middle East, or the Middle East when there's not a war going on there, but you'll see that even in the world, the auto industry is not growing. And there's a bunch of reasons for this, and we'll get into some of them. Part of it, peak pricing. And we all know that this problem in the United States, it's an issue of affordability. And you can see that prices have gone up for a long, long time. They really started to climb in the 1970s and 1980s as a bunch of regulation on cars came into the market. And then in the 90s and the early 2000s, we had this nice plateau. Then COVID hits and everything shoots up by 30%. And we have priced millions of households out of the new car market. Here's a chart that's I put together. I went back to 1950 and I looked at car sales for every year. This isn't every single year. This is about in 5-year increments until you get to the red line on the chart. That's around 2016, I think. And what it shows is car sales growing. But then I also looked at the population of the United States for all these years and calculated very easily what percentage of Americans went out and bought a new car in that year. 1978 was the highest year for the percentage of Americans who went out and bought a new car. And it was about 7%. Almost 7% of the population went out and bought a new car in 1978. 1986 was another good year. We got very close to the 7% again, and it's been downhill ever since. A smaller percentage of Americans, of the population, are buying new cars. The only thing that's helped the industry has been population growth. But think about what I said. In the year 2000, we sold more cars than we did last year, even though the population of the country has grown by almost 60 million people. 60 million more people in the country, and we're selling fewer cars. I'm telling you, this industry is no longer growing. And so this is kind of interesting. If the same percentage of Americans went out and bought a new car last year as they did in the year 2000, sales would have been 21 million, not 16.2 million. 21 million. Chinese market's 22 million. We would have almost had a market as big as the Chinese market had we been able to keep the same percentage of Americans buying a new car. So we've priced 5 million households out of the new car market. And is it an opportunity? I think it is, with the right product at the right price. And what we need to do is figure out how to take a tremendous amount of cost out of developing new vehicles to get the cost down. It's not about decontenting. It's not about offering more sales incentives. It's about designing the cost out of the car. And EVs present the greatest opportunity, I think, to be able to do that. You know, I talked about how the industry's not growing. Let's look at the two automakers based here in the Detroit area, because they're not really growing either. And so I made this chart that looks at the revenue General Motors brought in from 2015 to 2025. The blue line is a nominal dollars. And you can see it took a big nosedive in COVID and has come roaring back. And the stock market likes that. They like to see growth. But I did a little bit of calculating and recalculated GM's dollars to 2015 levels. And you can see General Motors revenue on an inflation-adjusted basis has not grown in a decade. GM's, in my book, really not growing. And Ford, same story. In fact, Ford's a little bit worse. Ford, on an inflation-adjusted basis, is bringing in less revenue than it did a decade ago. And so you have an industry that's not growing. You have legacy automakers who are not growing. I think if we put some of the Toyota numbers and maybe the Hyundai numbers, they'd look a little bit better than this. But I would argue for most other legacy automakers, you're going to find that on an inflation-adjusted basis, they're not really growing. So what do we got here? A market that's not growing, OEMs that are not growing. Market share has always been critically important in this industry. Now it is more important than ever. How do you grow your company if your market is not growing? What do you do about a company that on an inflation-adjusted basis really isn't growing? You got to do things differently. And it's even more critical when you start to look at what's happening in different segments of the market. So here's China. And what you'll see is the blue line is pure ICE vehicles. And we all know what's happening there. It's going down, and it's going down fast. The green line is BEVs. The orange line is PHEVs. The dotted line is new energy vehicles, i.e. EVs and PHEVs put together. And you see there was a transition point in 2024 where NEVs in China surpassed the sales of pure ICE vehicles. And it's a similar story in Europe. The blue line in this case is ICE vehicles. The red line, which is the real eye-opener to me, are diesel sales. Diesels in Europe in 2015 were over 50% of the market. Today they're under 10%. It's about 8% of the market. And you can see the green line, which is EVs, is growing. And it's not growing on the rate that China is, but the trend lines are unmistakable. And you can't deny what's going on there. In the US market, the blue line here is ICE vehicles. And you can see, BEVs and hybrids on the bottom there. So the US, it's still heavily ICE, but look at that trend line. It's still going down. And I think it's going to continue to go down until it looks like what we're seeing in Europe and maybe even China. Great product is the only thing that works in this industry. There's nothing wrong with this industry that great product can't fix. One of the best books I ever read about this industry is a book that's very, very difficult to find. It was published in the 1960s. It was by a former General Motors and Ford designer, and he wrote a book called Make 'Em Shout Hooray by a guy named Bill Stout. And Bill's whole argument was, when the public sees your brand new car for the very first time, they should jump up and shout hooray. And that's when you know that you've got a hit product on your hand. But you know, people can like something when they see it for the first time. But after 5 years of ownership, 6 years, 7 years of ownership, what do they think of the vehicle? So the key litmus test is to ask a customer, would you come back and buy another? So you need to make them shout hooray, but you also have to make them want to come back and buy another. So what do you do to change the way that things are in the industry right now? I'm really excited about this universal EV platform that Ford's going to be coming out with at the end of next year. They took a first principles approach, questioned everything, and have come up with a radically different way of developing a new car, building a new car, selling a new car. So Ford Motor Company, as most of you know, really didn't invent the moving assembly line, but it was the first to apply the moving assembly line to automotive assembly back in 1913. Revolutionized the industry. Every single car company in the world had to adopt the moving assembly line. Well, with this universal EV platform, Ford's actually getting rid of the moving assembly line as we know it. It's chopping the vehicle into 3 modules: a front module, a middle module, a rear module. The front's going to have everything that you would expect in the front end of a car. It's going to have the electric motor, it's going to have the steering, it's going to have headlights, it's going to have the instrument panel, the steering wheel, everything. The middle part is going to have the battery pack, the seats, the carpeting, everything that goes with that. The rear of the vehicle is going to have what you would expect: a trunk, a luggage compartment, a pickup bed, rear suspension. And these 3 modules are going to be assembled, snapped together, literally, and have a vehicle. What's amazing to me is Ford took out 60% of the stations in the assembly plant where it's going to be made in Kentucky. They're getting rid of 600 people in the plant. And it's not because they're coming out with a whole lot more robots. In fact, they're actually bringing more work into the plant. They're going to be doing aluminum castings there and a bunch of other stuff. And this is what I'm getting at, of thinking a different way of how to do a vehicle. By the way, even though Ford's been very open and public about what it's doing, although they haven't given away the store completely on this, we know for a fact Toyota is working on a similar program, on a project that they call the BEV factory in Japan. I hear BYD is looking at something like this. And I also hear there's at least one European automaker looking at doing the same sort of thing. And it's all about attacking the way that we've been doing cars, questioning everything, using a first principles approach, and coming up with a totally new way of doing things at much lower cost. Ford says it's going to have this EV out in the $30,000 range. And we know there's plenty of other $30,000 EVs out there. The key is, can you make a profit with a $30,000 EV built in the United States with UAW labor? That's a really high bar. That's an extremely high bar to be able to achieve. Much easier to be able to do this in lower cost countries and with non-union labor. The other thing that I like about this program that Ford's doing is there's going to be 4 to 5, maybe even 6 different models built on this platform. Because as you all know, right now, it's extremely difficult to be able to sell EVs in volume that will get you to the point where you can really start to make money on them. So I looked at Tesla's path to profitability. And the key for Tesla was when the Model 3 hit 50,000 units a quarter, 200,000 a year, that's when everything turned at Tesla and it started to make money. But it's very, very difficult for an automaker, certainly in the United States or Europe, to sell 200,000 of one model. So I really like this approach that Ford's taking, and I'm not trying to sing Ford's praises. It's just that they've been more open about what they're doing than other automakers have. I believe General Motors has got a low-cost EV that they're working on. I believe everybody else does too. I'm just using this example to drive the point home that you've got to rethink the way that we've been doing things, because the legacy Ford Motor Company is not going to be coming out with this kind of a product. Ford started a skunk works in California to get away from the mothership and 100 years worth of procedures and policies and specifications to have a completely clean sheet to be able to do this vehicle. And so how do you go faster? Because this is one of the key advantages the Chinese have right now. They can do a new car program in about 1/3 less time than it takes the legacy automakers. You know, I had dinner with Ed Welburn, the former head of design at General Motors, a few months ago, and he showed me this supercar that he has designed. It's beautiful. I mean, it's this very sleek two-seater hypercar performance. And the point that Ed really wanted to make to me was not, look at this beautiful design and isn't it cool? He said, John, I did this with one guy. I did this whole car, just me and one other guy. And it's a guy that I found online in Sweden. He said, I never even met this guy until we were deep, deep, deep into this project. He came to the United States and we met. He said, we did this all virtually. And his point, remember, I think he ran 6 different design studios around the world. He said, you know what the lesson to me in doing this car is? You don't need armies of designers. He said 2 people did one entire car. And so how do you move fast? You've got to iterate your design very quickly, but you need customer feedback on how to do that. And you got to do it cheap. Cardboard, Scotch tape, scissors. If you're building physical products, don't spend $1 million on it. Mock it up. Get real live customers in, whether it's friends or family or neighbors or whoever you can, to evaluate your design. Is it the right size? Is it the right height? Is it got features? Whatever it is, iterate your design based on what the customer is telling you. For automakers who work with suppliers, it means getting suppliers in early. I also had a chance to talk with Ralph Gilles, who's the head of design at Stellantis, and we were talking about how do you move programs a lot faster. He's really into this. And he says, I want suppliers at the sketch stage. I want them, as my designers are sketching out things, I want suppliers giving them direct input right there. You know, I talked to one of the guys on the Stellantis design staff last week, and he said, you know, back when we were going through bankruptcy and we didn't have any people, he said, man, did we move fast. He says, I'm a designer and I had a release engineer sitting literally, physically right next to me. And as soon as I was done with the design, I'd hand it to him, he'd get the thing approved, and it would go to production. We got to rethink the way that we're doing things. Burn the legacy specs and requirements. You know, we've got 100 years of policies and procedures and specifications that have been added for the best of reasons, all with good reasons, but now we've got to question whether they're still relevant. Some of them go way, way back. And here's the other thing that this industry needs to do a much better job on, and this is something that the Chinese are extremely good at: commonization of components. I don't mean common just within a car company. I mean common across an industry. I'll give you a couple of examples. Every single car has to have, in the United States, by law, a tire pressure monitoring sensor. It has to be able to tell you what the pressure of the tire sensor, the pressure of the tires is. And it's for getting good fuel economy and for safety. Every automaker has its own tire pressure monitoring system. They all do the same thing. They sit at the base of the valve stem. Why can't we commonize that? You know, every ICE vehicle has a fuel filler neck opening, you know, where you put the nozzle in to fill it up with gasoline. They're all different. We have windshield wiper motors that all do the same thing, that are all different. In fact, you can go through a whole litany of commodity products. And when I say commodity, what I mean by that is the customer doesn't care about them. The customer doesn't even see them. It's meaningless to the customer. It's a commodity. And we can look through an entire vehicle and find hundreds of parts on this that are all different company to company and even amazingly different within companies. I remember 20 years ago or more when Jack Nasser was the head of Ford Motor Company, and he was on a binge to commonize parts. He found out that the company had 5 different cigarette lighters around the world. 5 different cigarette lighters. Nissan did a study on this. Again, this goes back a couple of decades. They found that they had 25 different steering wheels within the company. And the question is, why do we have all this kind of stuff? In China, there is an organization called Qatar. I don't know if I can remember the name off the top of my head, but it's something like the Chinese Automotive, Technical, something or other. They're the ones who have written specifications for commodity products that the entire Chinese industry uses. So what's the advantage of this? Number one, if you have a commonized component that's used across the industry, man, do you get economy of scale. You end up with the cheapest price because the volume is stupendous. The other advantage is if you're designing a car and you can just pull a whole bunch of stuff off the shelf that's already there, it's validated, it's sourced instantly, man, can you take a lot of time out of your product development time. You know, in Japan, it just broke this week, just yesterday, as a matter of fact, that the Japanese industry through JAMA, the Japanese Automotive Manufacturers Association, has come to realize we got to commonize parts across the board. And they used an example. Suzuki was really trying to push this in the Japanese industry, and they got all the automakers together and they studied everything that they could commonize and they put their minds to it. And the only thing they could agree on to commonize was the ashtray. The only thing. So if we can reuse components to the max, boy, we could save a lot of time and money. You know, GM and Ford collaborated on a 10-speed automatic transmission. Any F-150 out there, any Silverado out there has got that 10-speed automatic transmission in it. They collaborated on the design of that vehicle. And when you talk to anybody in the powertrain operations at GM or Ford, they'll go, yeah, that was a great program. That went pretty well. And you say, okay, so what's plan B? What's the next step? Crickets. There is no plan. What we need is the top management in this industry to get together, whether it's Jim Farley and Mary Barra or Mark Royce, or we need at the very top level, we need them to agree to say, we got to move this forward. Maybe even more importantly than that, we've got to get the boards of directors of those companies aware of the need for commonization. Remember, this is an industry that just burned through $35 billion in EV write-offs. Capital deployment is so critically important right now. So why design all kinds of new parts, whereas if they were commonized, you don't need to deploy nearly as much capital. And I'm a big believer in small teams, co-located, working in the same area, cross-functional. So you don't just have groups of engineers, you have designers, engineers, manufacturing people, purchasing people, sales, marketing, finance, working together as teams. I think that's a way to go a whole lot faster in this industry. And so I'm making the point here that the industry's not growing, and it's not going to grow unless we can come out with cars that are far, far less expensive, much more affordable for the general public. We need compelling products to make them shout hooray, because there's nothing wrong with this business that can't be fixed with great product. So I'll leave you with this one thought. Back during the Second World War, Fisher Body, which was part of General Motors back then and a great part of the company, adopted the motto, when the strong arm fails, think your way to victory. And so we've been using the strong arm in this industry. We've been throwing billions of dollars at the problem. We've been throwing all kinds of people at the problem. We've been trying to get the government to help us. The strong arm has failed, and it's time for us to think our way to victory. Thank you very much.
Well, our theme is hype to headway. You've given us the challenges, but I love the answer that EVs are the best bet. So one more time, let's thank John.